Hi, my name is Reed Silverne. Name of this show is Fed Pride. Reason it's called Fed Pride is because I'm a federal worker and proud of it. I'm going to make sure I have my magic mouse over here. I'm going to give the world a spin, traditional spin, and I'm going to be talking mostly today about the U.S. itself. And let's spin it so that it's pretty much upright. There we are, and over my shoulder. So as I said, and I often say, this particular show is being done on Friday. You'll probably see it on Sunday or Tuesday. Much of what I'm going to talk about is probably going to be old news, and that's the beauty of talking about a news show that's live to tape. What does live to tape means? It means if I fall off my chair right now, you are going to see it on TV in 2 days, because what I am doing is completely live, and you notice that it's completely low tech. I have somebody set up my shot, and that is the shot that I have. The only thing that I really love here that's even slightly high tech is that there's a computer next to me and a blue screen behind me, and I'm able to go to the computer and put anything I want on. The really techno-savvy younger folks who have these shows are putting on YouTube videos and who knows what else, but I have just become barely techno-savvy enough to put up Google Earth and to manipulate Google Earth while we're actually on well, not quite on the air, or on the air in 2 days. So today I'm going to talk about the oil prices, and everybody knows that I have a basic pet peeve, and a number of pet peeves actually. But among my pet peeves is that the oil and gas industry, in a nutshell, has been not only ripping us off, and I absolutely am not going to pull any punches on that, because it is ripping us off. But on top of that, that they are actually endangering our national security as well as our economic security. And the way they're doing that is by jacking up the price of crude oil, which is to the benefit of a lot of the oil companies that actually get high value in a lot of the countries, not in Saudi Arabia, not in Venezuela, not in Russia, where the countries have basically taken over the high prices and produce it themselves, but in other places like Nigeria, and especially the U.S., where every barrel that they have and that they pull out of the ground is almost exclusively theirs. And I've already done shows about the part of the Department of Industry, I believe it's the Minerals division, that monitors the royalties that oil and gas companies are supposed to pay for pulling up oil and gas on federal land and, of course, federal waters, and how they have been underpaying their taxes and, of course, not supporting the United States at all. It just shows you what a bunch of warm-hearted, patriotic people they are. So basically, they are absolutely attuned and intent on importing as much oil as possible to the United States. They make money at every stage. In some countries, they are the crude oil producers, and they make the full $90 a barrel of the crude oil price. In others, they are the transporters. They are the refiners, and they're the distributors, and in some cases here in the United States, they actually own some of the gas stations. So the oil companies are definitely in it for themselves, and supply crises and so on and so forth are definitely to their advantage, and jacking up the prices to their advantage too, even though clearly it creates a much, much higher trade deficit on our part and makes us more and more dependent on foreign countries that are increasingly unfriendly. Who's unfriendly? And I was just talking to somebody about that. Hugo Chavez, Venezuela, is using high oil prices to create militias, just called himself president for life, took over the media and so on and so forth. Putin in Russia is recreated his aerospace industry, and in my opinion is starting up a new Cold War. Iran, and so on and so forth. And of course we have friends that produce oil as well, among which are Nigeria and Angola. Okay, Nigeria is right here, Angola is right here, and this whole Guinea coast over here is just full of oil and gas, and very good source for us, but also because these countries were a little weaker economically and weaker politically, our oil companies are able to really pull profits as if they're pulling it out of their own ground as opposed to the ground of these foreign countries. So, and then again, we're directly supporting our complete enemies. There's even an oil company within the United States, Citgo, which is owned by PDVSA, which is the oil company of the government of Venezuela that's been taken over by Hugo Chavez. And so if you buy oil from Citgo or gasoline from Citgo, you are directly in this wonderful subsidizing our enemies. Not indirectly by buying oil that are shipped to the United States by Exxon or some large oil company, but directly full every single dollar, every single penny supporting Hugo Chavez. So what does this mean? Well, oil prices are at a record high. They hit $90 a barrel this week. Today they're around 92. Of course, by Tuesday, for all we know, it could drop $10 and everybody would say, what the heck is this guy talking about? Who cares? The equivalent value in equivalent dollars, the highest oil price in history was in 1980. And there they had $38 oil at the time, but the dollar was worth a lot more in relation to other currencies, but also a lot more because there's been inflation over the last 27 years. So at that point, in equivalent today dollars, that would have been $101 a barrel. A barrel, of course, is 42 gallons. And right now we're between 90 and 92, depending on the minute, depending on the day, depending on the trader, and so on and so forth. I have an article over here, and basically this was a summary of the situation today, where it hit 92. And of course there's different crude oil prices in different areas. There's the Brent oil in London, there's light oil, there's other November future, and so on and so forth. But in a nutshell, oil hit 92. I think it might have gone down. Last week it hit 90 and went back down to the 80s, then came back up. And of course the oil traders always have these reasons why these things happen. And the latest is because George Bush has been threatening Iran with sanctions because of their nuclear program. In fact, I'm going to click on Tehran and see if it gets bigger. And it is, okay. So unfortunately it goes to the center of the screen, so I'm going to push it over here. Tehran is just about here. It's a little south of the Caspian. Most of the oil is over here along the Gulf, and then there's others, Caspian oil right over here. However, Iran oil production has been going down year by year by year, mostly because of sanctions on their banks and sanctions on their economy, so that the West will not really build refineries in Iran. And ironically, Iran, even though they export oil, about 2.5 million barrels a day, they actually import gas and then subsidize the gas. And they tried to partially lift the subsidies on the gas. There were riots throughout the whole Tehran area and some other cities in Iran. And of course, the Iranians backed off on that. But new sanctions are about to be imposed, and these are U.S. only sanctions. Doesn't appear anybody else is jumping on the bandwagon. But Ahmadinejad fired the nuclear negotiator, Larijani, who is considered a moderate in Iranian circles. Whether that's really moderate or not is another story. And basically put in one of his own hardliners. So he has been saying, and he is in charge, he is the president and in charge of the elected government itself. But in fact, he doesn't hold the real power. It's held by Ayatollah Khamenei, who is the Ayatollah and the supreme leader of Iran, and Larijani was his guy. So it's very interesting that he did get fired. So in response to that, which was in response to something else, in response to something else, in response to something else, Bush announced that the U.S. government was going to put new sanctions on Iran, sanctions on the Al-Quds Force. Of course, here I am in Britain. Why am I in Britain? Because London is one of the big centers of the commodities trading industry, and the city in London actually is one of the big spots where commodities are traded. Of course, Chicago is the other, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and I just happen to glom onto England over here, over my shoulder. So what does this all mean? Well, first of all, the real probable price, according to one analyst who works for Citigroup in Chicago, in New York, his name is Tim Evans, says that in fact inventories are expanding, not contracting, and that OPEC is about to increase its production by 500,000 barrels a day, and that there is no supply crisis in oil at all. So the crude price of oil has been skyrocketing, and that possibly is due to speculators jumping in the market and pushing the price up. There's usually two periods, one in the spring and one in the fall, when gasoline prices start hitting the roof because they're supposedly high driving seasons or preparation for high driving seasons. I always laugh when this occurs. There are some quirks with our refinery systems because in the fall, right about now, we have to pull off refining some gasoline, put Houston over here, over my shoulder. And this is the Gulf of Mexico. It doesn't look like it, but let me kind of push Texas over there. So that they have to start refining the heating oil, and that takes away some refining capacity from gasoline, and that usually drives up prices in the late fall. And then in the springtime, there's going to be the driving season, and there's also certain states have pollution problems. They have to oxygenate the gasoline, change the additives, as if they can't just use those additives all year long. But some of those additives are actually ethanol and things like that, and basically the oil industry doesn't want to add that in. So they have this period when they adjust the refining capacity. They do that in the spring, and then of course the price of gas shoots upward again. However, the last big rise in the price of gas, which was last spring, gasoline was $3.25 even here in Tucson, Arizona. In California, it was in $3.50s, well over $3. And in fact, at that time, the crude price was about $65. It had gone up to around $65, which represents $1.55 in the crude price of gasoline. So if they're selling at $3.25 and the crude price of gasoline is $1.55, that is a $1.70 margin for the oil companies. And of course, that was between elections. That was quite a long way, 1907, spring of 07. And the election season hadn't quite started. Now, we're in the middle of the beginning of the primary season. Primaries for the election of not only both houses of Congress, but the presidency of the United States. Now let's take a look and see what the margin is. Right now, at $92 a barrel, which is, I admit, the tip top, $2.19. I went out the door and actually filled up over at a certain gas station that has cheapo discounted gas. I filled up for $2.65. At the difference between $2.65 and $2.19, that's a 46-cent margin. That's refining, that's distributing, that's getting it to the pump, that's supporting the bringing people in to go buy coffee at the little mini mark or the AM PM mart or whatever you want to call it. Basically where gas stations make all their profit because they don't make anything on gas, just a loss leader. But the fact of the matter is now they are able to live with a margin of 46 cents. Now, I checked the nationwide price of gas. It's $2.82. So 64 cents is closer, 63 cents. It's closer to what the real margin is throughout the country. So here they brought their margin, the difference between the crude per gallon price of oil and the price at the pump from $1.70 to 64 cents, and yet they're still in business. They're obviously not pulling $10 billion a quarter out of our hides, but they're still in business. And they must be making a profit, because if they weren't, their stocks would be collapsing, and we'd be hearing about it on the front page of the business section. So how are they able to live with only a 65-cent margin when they claimed that they had to have a $1.70 margin in order for the whole capitalistic system to work? The basis is it's garbage. It's absolute garbage. They can live on 65-cent margin. They should be always living on 65-cent margin, and yet they're not. And we'll be seeing what will happen, because the next round of conversion at the refineries, where they're going to be taking some of the stocks and converting it from gasoline production to heating oil production, which usually is used as an excuse to just drive the price of gasoline through the roof. That and, oh, there might be another hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. Well, you know, there's a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico every fall, somewhere. And yet the prices were higher last fall, which was one of the easier hurricane years, than it was 3 years before, when 4 hurricanes devastated Florida. So basically, yeah, the late fall, it's A, hurricane season, B, there's unrest in the Middle East. Oh boy, when is there not unrest in the Middle East? C, Bush doesn't like the Iranians. Oh boy, when does Bush like the Iranians? And that is all an excuse to ride the crude price up. And of course, the oil companies make money on the crude price on all the countries that are weak politically. And of course, they lose some money when they deal with Venezuela, Iran, Russia, and the countries that have nationalized their oil and that exclusively get oil themselves. Of course, Russia has their own oil company that's controlled by the Russian government, and they pipe oil through pipelines that they own as well. So Russia's completely independent, and the Europeans are completely dependent on the Russians. But Venezuela, some other countries that have nationalized oil, they are getting that whole difference. But all the difference from the crude price of oil to the price at the pump is basically manipulated and controlled by our larger oil companies. So that's basically it. So they're getting along with a much, much lower margin than they usually do, although some of them are making money on Angola and Nigeria and African oil and Indonesia, depending on what deal they have with the countries. They don't make much money on Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia, again, they've nationalized their oil, and they have their own oil company that owns the oil reserves over there. But there are other places that do, but they're able to get along with a margin that is 1/3 what they have been demanding previously. So I'm hoping that this will make at least the people that watch my show, not a lot, but a few people, and I do appreciate you, at least step aside and think about it when this election season is over and the margin goes back up to $1.75 or $1.50 or $2, and we're paying $4 a gallon for gas, that they've gotten along. They didn't suffer right during an election season at only 46 to 65 cent margin, and much, much lower than the margin that they charge during these crises, usually that are produced for 2 or 3 months in the spring and then 2 or 3 months in the late fall and early winter. So that's basically where I'm at on that. I believe that that is completely driven by the fact that we're about to have an election. I think the oil industry is scared to death that we're going to elect a government that's going to say we will have, and I mean have, and we can do it, our oil and gasoline imports within a 10-year, put together a 10-year plan. And basically right now, plug-in hybrids average 100 miles a gallon. Regular hybrids are 35 to 40 miles a gallon. And just the Senate bill that increased the average mileage from 24 to 35, that would reduce our imports by 2 to 3 million barrels a day right there. And then, of course, there's gigantic, right about here, western Montana and Utah have tremendous amounts of shale oil. And the Shell Oil Company has figured out how to effectively pull out almost unlimited amount of oil from oil shale by freezing the water table in a square and then heating the oil shale in the middle, and it literally creates pressure that pushes oil up. They've had a very, very small, like couple acre facility produce 20,000 barrels of oil, and so they've proven it at $35 a barrel. So basically America could produce 2, 3, 4 million barrels a day, and then of course we are now importing 2 million barrels a day from Alberta, Canada, right around here, and there they have oil sands, and they basically have 2 trillion or 1 trillion barrels of oil sands. And right now, they're up to 2 million barrels a day, and they'll be up to 3 million barrels a day. Those are how much we're importing from Canada within a couple years. So NAFTA could virtually be oil independent within 10 years without a problem. All we got to do is change our technology from big, giant, gas-consuming cars and trucks to big, giant hybrid trucks. And apparently Chevy is coming out with hybrid trucks next year, and some of the previous gas guzzlers, and they're supposed to have pretty good performance. We'll see. And hopefully that will be what America turns to. If the GM really cuts from the oil industry and actually advertises hybrid, big hybrid American trucks as a patriotic gesture, to tell the dictators of the world to go take a jump by buying hybrid trucks that are just as big and powerful as the Ram trucks and big Chevy trucks of today. In fact, we could start becoming more oil independent really, really quickly, and just a tiny little variance can drive the price of oil and gas down tremendously. Basically, what they're doing now is destroying themselves as a monopoly, because monopolies have to underprice their competition, not overprice their competition. That's what they're doing now. My name is Reed Silverne. Name of this show is Fed Pride. Reason it's called Fed Pride is because I am a retirement eligible federal worker at present. Thank you very much, and thanks for watching.